Can I throw an aside? You can cut this out if you want.
I will.
But I saw that they just, yeah, please do. I saw that they just made a sequel. They just made a Christmas Story movie where the same kid plays the kid as an adult. And I saw the poster, and he has 2 eyeballs. And I was like, they made this movie wrong. I'm not going to watch it.
Oh my God, you're right.
Hello? 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 Hey, quiet! It's him again! The Mona!
You're in an elevator. A producer says they're looking to make a new movie, but they say you have to make a horror movie based around a holiday. What holiday are you picking and why?
Arbor Day. The Happening has the lockdown on trees getting revenge. It's not going as hard as it could be. I think you could do a real solid nature revenge built around trees retaking Earth, retaking plots of land, retaking cities, and turning human beings into compost. But I think you can make it kind of gnarly and do it fun and good. No offense, M. Night Shyamalan. He's bad at movies.
Oh, I'm gonna have to disagree there. I even kind of like The Happening.
That was aimed at you.
We'll talk about some. Yeah, we'll talk about some tree-based violence when we talk about the '06 Black Christmas, of course. I was thinking Arbor Day. It's a shame they've really all been done, and it's such a cliche to say Halloween. I mean, any movie set around Halloween, horror or otherwise, is good because I love Halloween decorations. I love the whole like scary but not idea, but. I don't know. It could be Veterans Day, and you could do sort of maybe like a feature-length version of something like what Joe Dante did for like Homecoming. It could be sort of like ghosts of like even like Bob Clark's Deathdream or Dead of Night or whatever the real title is. I don't know. He calls it a third title in that interview. Something like that, where like maybe veterans from Vietnam or from Iraq or something coming back.
I was gonna say Deathdream on Flag Day.
Yeah.
Could call it Veterans Day or Flag Day. Yeah. Although Sean Penn made a movie called Flag Day a few years ago. So unfortunately, Flag Day is, yeah.
You can use a Sean Penn title. Nobody cares.
I am unfortunately not among the dozen people who've seen it this time around. But.
Snow, what about you?
I'm going Easter. I want surprises. I want to bring like gross amounts of pastels, but with the horror somehow. I don't know exactly how I'd make it work. I need to work on the elevator pitch being concise, but someone popping out of an egg at some point, definitely resurrection, lots of possibilities for sequels, keep the jobs rolling. Yeah.
I love a full pastel color scheme for honestly any movie, but also a horror movie. I think that's genius.
Yeah, it needs another name.
I love the idea of someone opening up an egg and there's an eyeball.
An eyeball.
I've got eyeballs in the brain. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got eyeballs on the brain.
They think it's going to be a Sacagawea dollar.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Split Picks. We are back. It's been a while. We haven't talked since October Horror. And we looked at Italian horror. I had a blast doing that just the whole way through. Italy's got some good stuff. And we thought we should probably keep the horror theme going because it's Christmas and somehow we've never made the logical jump to, go from Halloween to Christmas, which I'll say is probably top 2 holidays for horror movies. But today we have, I'll just say the A-team joining us. We've got Jim. How you doing today?
I am doing well.
Doing well. Good. You're on winter break now, right?
I am. I just turned in grades. I am now a free man.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Thank you.
Bennett, you're back. You had some more apartment issues this time.
Ooh.
How's that going? How are you?
It's good. It's dry over here now. Thankfully, thank you everybody for rescheduling. But there's a spooky chill in the air. Does anyone else feel that?
A little bit. And Snow, you just moved to a new apartment. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I don't know if I've unpacked all of my brain yet, but it's partially there. So, I'll try.
It's a start. Yeah, I don't know if any of us are fully brain right now. I'm getting over a cold that just refuses to go away. So if we say stupid things, it's none of our fault. We're not liable.
We still get to be the A team.
Yeah.
You said it, not me.
We're doing this because, Snow, you reached out and said, why hasn't Split Tooth done a Christmas horror series yet? And it was just so obvious, like, I don't know. So we're here, but I'm just curious, what movies were you watching that made you want to take a deeper dive into Christmas horror?
Black Christmas is certainly one. Mm-hmm. And I love Rare Exports, which I actually watched for the first time with Jim over there. Yeah. That's another one I love. And then, honestly, I grew up on Nightmare Before Christmas, and I know now it's like overdone and whatever, but it totally set the mood for me growing up of loving the creepy side of Christmas. So, and I just didn't feel super warm and fuzzy holiday this year. I was like, I want to talk about some people dying around Christmas and, all that.
'Tis the season.
Cheer myself up in a very nihilistic way.
Yeah. There you go. Your own little weird gift to yourself, right?
Exactly.
Jim, Bennett, do either of you have any standout Christmas horror favorites that you either watch yearly or just love?
Black Christmas is the big one, and then Christmas Evil over the last couple of years has become another one. I saw a pretty good horror double feature of Christmas movies last week on 35. It was It's All a Good Night and Don't Open Till Christmas, both of which are pretty poorly reviewed amongst people who follow me or who I follow on Letterboxd. But I thought they were both a hoot. Maybe it was just being with like a packed audience. But they showed the Black Christmas trailer beforehand. And like, there's an example of how to show like everything that happens, but still make you want to see the movie. You see like every kill, but you see it in these weird like snatches. And it of course has the immortal tagline, if this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight. Delivered by this kind of guy who sounds like a cut rate James Mason. It's so good. Really gets you in the mood for some Christmas horror.
Is that the one where somebody at some point hangs someone on an antler?
No, that's Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I have a slurry in my head of horror movies.
There's so many of them. No, that's Silent Night, Deadly Night. We just watched Silent Night, Deadly Night 5 for the first time. Have any of you seen that?
I don't think I went past 3.
I didn't know there were more than 3 until this year. Mickey Rooney plays a toy maker named Joe Petto.
What?
I've heard of this. Yes. I gotta see this.
That's all.
What era? What era Mickey Rooney?
Ooh.
Like 2000s?
90s, I think.
Okay.
There's a new box set with 3, 4, and 5.
I mean, I guess I'm in.
It's actually
he was the top star in Hollywood from 1939 to 1941. 2 whole decades, guys. Show some respect.
2 whole decades. Jim, what about you? Any Christmas horror favorites?
As I mentioned, I do. I just have a slurry in my brain. I do. I mean, I like Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. I like. There's one you just wrote about, right? What is it? Something Père Noël.
Yeah, Dial Code Santa Claus.
Dial Code Santa Claus. I've seen that a couple of times. That movie is awesome.
It's so much fun.
Although I will say, you posted a screenshot that was like a picture of like car headlights beaming out on the like unhoused guy that is the like bad Santa. And I was like, oh, this screenshot is kind of better than the whole movie. But I love the movie. The whole movie is great. So,
I couldn't find the shot I wanted because right after that, they show it from inside the car, and he does like a like messianic, like, yeah. I'm here for you. And it's so creepy because it's just like the headlights with the silver beard. Movie's so good.
It is a brilliant film, yeah.
But we're here today because you've all mentioned Black Christmas already. Our first idea for this podcast was to try and keep it on the lighter side. We thought, why don't we look at Bob Clark? Great director who, I think a lot of people don't realize did 2 of the greatest Christmas movies ever. I'm just going to say it. But he directed both A Christmas Story and Black Christmas. So we thought it'd be fun to look at just, how one person can do 2 holiday classics that are just so different like that, but also kind of are oddly similar. But then Bennett said, why don't we just do the 3 Black Christmases? Because those are...
Because Bennett likes to watch worse movies.
He does, it's true. It torments all of us.
I like going to bat for pieces of shit. Come on.
Yeah, you did choose the worst one.
But Bennett, why? I'm just curious because I think a lot of people just say like, well, okay, obviously the original is the best. I don't think there's any argument on that. But the other two both have their defenders. But why did you want to look at all 3 of these for this episode?
Well, it's interesting because the first one is such a timeless classic. I first became aware of it through this countdown show that used to always air on Bravo, this top 100 scary movie moments thing that aired. It felt like every week for years of my childhood they would air this. And Black Christmas was among the highly rated films that like I had never heard of, was not like a household name. I don't know if maybe it was not like kind of like widely seen for some years or not like widely distributed, but it was something that like stuck in my mind for forever. And Shudder actually just redid this specific countdown this year.
Like they found the old Bravo countdown, or they just recreated the
idea?
No,
they did their new version. They like full on like rebooted like basically it's like branded the same way and everything. Okay. So this is very much top of mind for a certain sort of nerd again. But anyway, when the 06 when the 06 film came out and that trailer was all over like E and VH1 and everything, I was watching as like a a pop culture obsessed like 12-year-old. That reignited in my mind. Oh yeah, Black Christmas is that film you've heard about on the countdown a bunch. So I watched that and was like, well, wow, this really is a classic, and it's been a perennial favorite. It is not just one of the best horror movies, best Christmas horror movies. It's one of the best films ever made, folks. It's a real classic. And then I think what's so interesting is that you have this timeless film that has been remade twice, and I use remade kind of in quotes because as I think we'll talk about. Even the one of these films that's really beholden to the original in terms of like characters having the same names and plot beats being repeated is really quite dissimilar from Bob Clark's film. You have this timeless film and then an 06 remake and a 2019 remake that are both as of their time as it can possibly get. There are early talky musicals that have aged better than the 06 film in particular, I think. But at the same time, and maybe it's just the recent dives into Fulci and like late Argento and some of like the sort of trashier sides of like Italian exploitation. There's something to be said for just making a movie as gross as you can possibly make it, and like every single object that the camera focuses on being used as like a weapon of some sort. I don't know. On repeat viewings, when I got over my sort of knee-jerk aversion, I couldn't help but feel a little bit of affection for the 06 version because I think we'll all agree. It looks better than a lot of the horror movies today. Look, I don't know. It's got an aesthetic. And then the 2019 one, that's another one that I think I had an unfair reaction to when it came out, both because I felt a certain protectiveness over the original film, and because the first trailer for the 2019 film truly shows you the entire plot in a way that even our current day trailers that we're accustomed to seeing the final frames of film in trailers, and even still, that one shows you a lot. But I don't know. I thought it might be interesting to see how the original two the two remakes rather compare to the original, and to make two brave souls try to defend the two kind of maligned versions of Black Christmas. Jim, of course, the coward here. Is going to bat for the original. Sorry, it's a very long answer. The short version is I really love the original, and am growing more and more fond of the two remakes.
So with that being said, Bennett, which version did you pick?
Of course, the 06 version from Glenn Morgan, who I believe has only otherwise directed the remake of Willard that preceded this.
Oh, I wish I'd rewatched that.
I've never seen it.
That's
one of two horror remakes made in 2003 where R. Lee Ermey says the line, "You're not afraid of a little blood, are you?"
Beautiful.
It's a weird IMDb-ass trivia fact.
It's also
for you.
Famous. The thing that is famous about it is that despite having Crispin Glover, it's worse than the original Willard, right? Like that's the only thing anyone cares about that movie. So it's interesting that that's this guy's legacy is making two deficient remakes.
He also wrote the first three Final Destination movies, I think, which I love. I've got a lot of affection for. Finding out that he was a Final Destination guy really kind of helped put this 06 remake in a new perspective. the fact that like we'll often like focus on these objects and you're kind of just waiting to see how it's going to end up like killing somebody. I don't know. And there's like a winking bit of, there's very like winking direction throughout, which feels very much like we've just like set up these Rube Goldberg machines to watch people like die in elaborate ways, which like, I don't know, can get tiresome extended really past like 90 minutes. But thankfully this movie is like 81 minutes and 10 minutes of credits.
It's a lot of credits. I was really struck by how many minutes of credits.
I think it might be a result of like the 4 rounds of reshoots.
Well, it's definitely. Oh, maybe. I was thinking that it was like they were like, we need to hit a specific runtime, so we're gonna just dump a lot of words in here.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah.
So, Bennett, you had the first pick. Snow, you had the second pick. Which version did you pick and why?
Well, I picked the 2019 one because even though the original is my favorite, because obviously it's everyone's favorite, I didn't want to be a coward, so I left that to Jim.
I'm good at it.
No. I saw a lot, so I often don't love the super, super politicized movies that are like very focused on being, you know, quote unquote woke and everything. And I felt like this one did it better than a lot of movies I've seen. And then I liked some of the story stuff they were doing, so I figured I'd go to bat for it.
All right. And to our coward, Jim, why did you luck into talking about the original one?
Because I'm slow to respond to emails, baby. I have the default position of going to bat for the original Black Christmas, which everyone openly acknowledges is the best movie out of these 3 films.
Even the other filmmakers both
I would
do.
say pick most pools of 10 movies. It's among the best of them.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's not a hard one to go to bat for. So I'll just play color commentary while they fight it out for second place.
Well, should we dive into Bob Clark's first? Does that make the most sense?
Sure, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
So, if you ask the average person, they will likely tell you that Halloween is the first movie to really kick off the slasher genre. Jim, on a Synesthesia episode a few years ago, I think it was Jason who told the story of Bob Clark having a conversation with John Carpenter. Do you remember this, we'll call it legend?
I actually just listened to an interview with Bob Clark where he recounted the story.
Perfect.
And I was like, he's lying. But he has a conversation. He has a story about having a conversation with Johnny Carps about having finished this movie and running into old Carpenter and being like, you know, if I was gonna make a sequel, I think I'd probably set it on Halloween. I'd probably set it on Halloween. I'd probably just call it Halloween, and it'd just be about this guy getting out of this, leaving the sorority house and murdering more young women around town. And John Carpenter was like, you think you're gonna do that? Is that a movie you're gonna make? Is that what you're doing next? And he was like, nah, I'm done with the slasher world. I've kicked off the genre. I invented it. I am a genius. I'm going to go make Porkies. And John Carpenter was like, yeah, cool. And then went and wrote Halloween. Famously, often, as you say, considered sort of the slasher film. Despite, as you sort of allude, pulling most of its cues, not most, a lot of its cues from this. This, and one might argue, also Giallo films.
Yeah. So I think it might be a good way to start with this film by just saying, basically almost 50 years later, this movie is probably more famous than it's ever been. And I think anytime people see it, there's that moment of like, wait, this came when? Like, it's just kind of one of those movies that you really have to understand when it came out to really appreciate how great it truly is. So, and if you all want to take a crack at this, I think that would be a great way to get going. But why are we still talking about this movie, and what are its greatest strengths?
I think in addition to, it is a strong, I think if you look at the sort of pantheon of important early slasher films, it is one of the better amongst them. but it's also, it's like notable that it's so early. I mean, I would note that it is the same year as Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
So it's not like so mind-blowing that it comes out in 1974. There's a lot, Herschel Gordon Lewis was making the things he was doing 10 years earlier, right? He had already retired by this point. Mm-hmm. So it's not in a vacuum. Mario Bava also was doing Mario Bava stuff 10 years before this. But among American films, it is very early for what it is doing. But I think
Canadian,
the other sure, yeah, Canadian, North American films, it's still America. It's very early for what it's doing. It's also I think what's most striking about it is, and I've only seen, I think, 2 Bob Clark movies. I haven't seen Porky's. I don't remember what else he made.
Deathdream. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead
I've
things.
seen a few. I've seen a few Bob
Baby
Clark
Geniuses.
movies.
Rhinestone.
Okay,
Dog.
I've seen all of Bob Clark's movies. And one of the things that is striking, at least about this and a couple of those other ones, is his sort of engagement with humanity in a way that a lot of filmmakers try to engage with humanity, but a lot of horror filmmakers don't. They work with sort of iconography and sort of using things as theatrical representations of what they are meant to be, rather than sort of directly human, warm things, right? And this movie really engages with trying to make its characters into lovable but flawed. That's a dumb thing to say, but into sort of actual human beings, right? Who are existing in a world. And I think that is a thing that not only is it really early to engage with, right? Even if you watch Herschel Gordon Lewis or Mario Bava or any sort of earlier horror movies. I mean, even, I don't know, everything I can think of. You go back as far as like Universal horror. It's like things are very symbolic in the way they exist on screen. And so it's one of the best examples I can think of that tries to make characters in a horror movie more immediate and real rather than symbolic, which Bob Clark clearly has a touch for, and does, I think, in a really good and loving way. So I think that is what ultimately is the reason we still talk about it and the reason it still stands out.
Mm-hmm.
And can I say that I feel like that's part of the reason for me anyways that film is terrifying.
Yeah.
The way it engages with humanity, it makes it like so real, even though there are these very like stylistic choices obviously, but like I always remember the scene where they're finding the girl's body in the park.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it brings it home that there's just like horror all around and we're seeing like one pocket of it happen, but it could happen to anyone. And it feels like this very vulnerable, real space.
Yeah. That
I think wouldn't happen if he didn't have that relationship with humanity as a director.
Yeah, that's a scene we'll come back to that because there's a few things in there that are just unbelievably well done. Bennett, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean it's just really kind of like remarkable how many things that we take for granted that this movie does a couple years before the movie that we credit with like inventing all of these things, as well as like several other movies. I mean, in addition to like the POV stuff,
sure, and
the whole concept of like the final girl. There's also like the call is coming from inside the house here, which is such a it's like Rocky in a way for horror movies, in the way that it presents all of these things that we now consider like hoary cliches that are really actually like really thrilling when presented here by like a filmmaker of this caliber and a cast like this.
Yeah. So Jim, maybe this would be a good time. You want to just give us a little background about what Black Christmas is about?
Sure. Yeah. It is, speaking of the calls coming from the inside the house, right? It's sort of built on a couple of like sort of enduring urban legend and apparently also some local actual murder stories. But sort of it's built around, and I actually forgot this was an element of it because it's not what stands out the most to me in the film, but it's sort of built around the old sort of, what's the original story? It's like a babysitter and she's getting phone calls and she calls the police and they track the calls and they're like, they're coming from in the house, right? Well, that's just sort of the old story, right? Like you can read that in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, right? There's a version of that.
Yes. Yeah. It's where I first encountered
that story's been around forever. And that's sort of, it's on some level a riff on that, right? But it's also a riff on sort of a black gloved murderer and a riff on just like abject murder terror, where I mean the plot is really loose, right? It's like a sorority house and it's Christmas and an unknown murderer, maybe named Billy, has crawled up the outside of the house into the attic and is just murdering the people in the house. That's it. That's the whole plot of the movie. Everything beyond that is sort of the social dynamics of the people in the space, who are, some are friends, some of them are less friends, and some of them are townies who are uncool. So says Margot Kidder.
Yeah. Yeah. So early on, the sorority starts getting these weird phone calls.
Obscene.
They are just truly bizarre. I mean,
super bizarre. They're like I Am Legion. Like, we hear whole spaces and multiple voices, and
it's crazy.
They're like
even
kind
today,
of
the calls are
abusive,
nuts.
but not by any normal standard. Yeah.
When I've like showed the film to people, like the calls are sort of like a tough like
you have
hill
to get across.
climb. You have to be like, yeah, this is pretty rough stuff. I know, but like,
and they let you sit with it for so long.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the call.
they
like,
go on
just
for
going
forever.
on forever. And watching all their faces.
It's and then they were recorded separately too, so it's also like how good of like performances Clark is like getting out of them, like and that they're giving, that they don't know what they're reacting to, and he edits it together so perfectly that they really seem like they're reacting to these calls. But
on set, it's just Bob Clark being like, "I'm scary, I'm spooky, I'm coming for you,
I'm scaring you." Hey, all right. But it's a testament to how shocking they still are that the calls in the 06 version, or the one call, I think, sucks in comparison.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna kill you. Like, come on, folks. They did it better in 74. Truly, like, disgusting.
Yeah.
Just revolting.
I heard the main voice guy in one of the interviews, he said that for a lot of it he was upside down so that his body was crushing his throat so he sounded weird.
That's amazing.
Genius.
I believe it, because those sounds. Damn.
Yeah. I saw an interview with Bob Clark where he said there were 5 people. He was one of them. But yeah, he's like, we just kind of taunt each other to just do the grossest things we could think of. And then just, at the very, like the one that always gets me is when it just goes from the crazy voice to just, I'm going to kill you. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
To me, like watching this again last night, the thing that stood out most is just how Bob Clark captures emotion throughout this movie. And like, it's a huge testament to how good the actors are in this. But like, especially in that first phone call scene, just watching all of their faces, it's just like a rainbow of like, oh, happy, sad, oh god, they're all just like in totally different places mentally.
Also, we should note that like this cast is like a phenomenal cast for a movie, horror movie, a Canadian tax shelter horror movie from 1974, right? We Olivia Hussey, hot off Romeo and Juliet, like Margot Kidder, Andrea Martin coming over from SCTV to be the funny one. There's I don't remember who else. A million other. Oh, the dude from 2001 in sort of a bit role.
Yeah. I was so surprised that like it's not like he caught all these people before they had big roles that they're known for. Like Keira Knightley was off of 2001. Margot Kidder had already done Sisters. I mean, she hadn't done Superman yet, I guess.
Sure.
But
they
Olivia
were
Hussey
known.
had already
They were
done
all
Romeo and
known
Juliet.
entities.
Yeah, they were all known people.
And he was like, "Hey, do you want to come get murdered in a sorority house?" And they were like, "Yeah, great." Which, can you imagine? Like, I don't know who's like equivalently famous right now. Zendaya, is that right? Am I hitting the right echelon?
I think that's how you say it.
I don't understand modern fame.
And we learned so much about the characters, in this opening scene that's like intercut between like Billy coming in the house and like Claire basically going up to pack, and like this sort of party wrapping up. We learned so much about these characters very, very quickly. The intercutting is so great. Yeah. We learned about like Claire's like sort of like dynamic with her boyfriend, who like her dad doesn't know about. We learned about Barb's relationship with her mother through this like phone call. We know that Phyllis, Andrea Martin's character, is sort of like this like intermediary. I think her relationship with Barb throughout is so beautifully captured. How like, I don't know, it's like really complicated, but there's still this like love there. Yeah. I think like this one and the 2019 version both do such a great job of like capturing the complicated relationships between everybody, and how they're really in this together, but they feud and stuff. Whereas like the 06 one, they all just fucking hate each other. Like it really, it's in the very cynical, angry, like acid 06 horror remake sort of headspace.
One of my first notes on that was I was like, the Margot Kidder in the first movie is like drunk and a little belligerent, but fun and playful, and they're friends, and sometimes she pushes people's buttons, right? Yeah. And in the woman who plays that equivalent in the 2006 movie is just awful. They're like, that's right?
He's
She's
just
terrible.
drunk.
Everyone hates her. And you're like, that's not quite the same, but okay.
So I bring up how Bob Clark frames emotion in this because I was struck by the similarities to A Christmas Story, because there's so much of this movie that feels like a lot of these characters could have driven home to the Christmas Story house, and it would still make sense as a movie.
Oh, you should make that version where one of them leaves and drives home, and then you have to edit her into A Christmas Story.
Or comes back after Black Christmas.
New project for next year.
Guys, I got this great lamp.
Which shows up in what, the 2006 one, right?
I think
it does. Yeah. I didn't catch it, but I've heard the homage reference.
It comes back in one of them. I saw it.
Yeah. But I do think it's worth talking about how Bob Clark really does make this movie just feel so bright until it's not. But
well, like the audio quality is so warm and like fuzzy,
and the lighting,
and the colors are beautiful. The lighting's it's got like a haze on. It is shot like the way if you were gonna try to shoot a horror movie like this right now, you would shoot it like a Lifetime movie, right? It's shot in like a very posy, warm, fuzzy, like gentle blur kind of. The whole aesthetic of it says Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of comforting.
Yeah, it's thankfully shot on film and not digital, so it has this this warm, comforting glow. I love the opening credits.
Stuff on film and not have it be warm and pleasant.
Oh no, and not have this look. But I love the opening credits so much. I think they, not to keep comparing this movie to Halloween, it's one of these movies where you have to almost do it a disservice by constantly comparing it. But I think the opening credits do just as great a job of like placing you in Christmas as the opening credits of Halloween do, of placing you in Halloween, just that jack-o'-lantern, or the opening credits of Don't Open Till Christmas, the burning Santa. Just we're on the house. It's very quiet. It's very sedate. We're hearing like Silent Night playing. Yeah. Again, not to get ahead of ourselves, but such a contrast to the opening of the 2006 film, which immediately places you in like it's a buzzier, louder kind of Christmas. But I really love that like Clark and throughout. I mean, so many of the kills are like intercut with like Christmassy stuff going on. Yeah. He really he takes both sides of this very seriously and like really seems to capture them so perfectly. I mean, one of the things I like so much about I don't love A Christmas Story. I probably just by virtue of having seen it like too many times over the years. But I think one of the things it does well, and one of the things that like it's like rosy, like Wonder Years-ass narration kind of belies, is the fact that it's largely a movie about how much it sucks to be a kid. Like how much being a kid is, even if you look back on it with fondness, it's a lot of like people telling you what to do. It's a lot of like not being able to do what you want to do. It's a lot of just kind of getting like pushed around and being like, all right, put this fucking coat on. All right, here, go, stand in this line. Here's eat this. And he, is not wear the bunny suit. Like he's very, it's a movie that's very tuned into those moments, the moments of like when childhood sucks because of like the lack of autonomy. And I think here in like, but he talked in a lot of interviews about Black Christmas, about like wanting to make a college movie that wasn't like a beach blanket bingo sort of a movie. Yeah. And I think he does that not just in the fact that people get killed here, but the fact that we see a lot of like sadness and a lot of like the weird relationships these people have with like their parents and their friends. There's a lot of like much the same way that like Christmas Story, for all its like nostalgia and all its like looking back fondly, really captures what it's like to be a kid. This film really captures, I think, what it's like to be like 20-something years old and like negotiating like whether or not you're going to go home for winter break. Like the stuff with Barb, the stuff with Claire and her father and her boyfriend. That's all. It's a very like realistic depiction of, I think, like what it's like to be like one of these people. Whereas like the 2006 movie and even to a degree the 2019 movie are very much about like a film idea of college, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think maybe one of the sort of glues that and I think this might be true across the Bob Clark filmography, although I'm not 100% certain on that, but certainly in these two films, is that it's all people who are in a scenario where they have to get along with each other even when they don't get along with each other, but like on a deep level they care about each other, right? Like that's like you said, there's a lot of sort of like scrapping in A Christmas Story, right? There's a lot of like people pushing people around and making them do things they don't want to do and getting mad at each other and fighting with each other, but like ultimately that's sort of where the nostalgia lies, right? Ultimately they all love each other, but I think that's also there in A Black Christmas, right? Where it's like there is this sort of deep warm nostalgia running underneath things, where like ultimately, except for the like mystery murderer in the attic, everyone really, there's like a real love for each other even when they even when they're mad at each other, they hate each other. The other thing, I just want to jump on, just because I noted this, I happenstantially rewatched A Christmas Story, and I was like, this movie is good. I've never been like super in love with it, but it's like a good movie. But there's a moment in it where the kids are in the classroom for, I think, the first time that we see them, and the teacher's coming in, and like one of the kids hands out a bunch of fake teeth for everyone to put in, and all the kids put in fake goofy teeth that are sticking out of their mouths, which is like a harmless, charming prank. And the teacher walks in and is like, hi, and they're all like, good morning, whatever teacher's name is. Miss Shields, thank you. And there's a shot of the classroom, and most of the kids are too embarrassed to show their face with the teeth. They've all committed to this prank, but most of them are like covering their faces or like kind of half down on their desks. They're all super embarrassed about doing this thing that they're all doing together. And I was like, that's a thing. If I were making this movie, if I, a hack, were making this movie, I would be like, teeth up. Show me them goofball teeth. I want everyone in a perfect grid of goofball teeth. I want it to be a really striking image. I want you to look like a spreadsheet made out of fake teeth.
Gag teeth cost?
Yeah. But he's like, no, this is correct. This is... Kids like have a good idea, but they're a little scared to do it, even though it's just a cute, harmless thing. And it's such a strong, beautiful moment. And I think he does similar. I think this film, Black Christmas, is full of similar emotions, right? I think he just has a really strong understanding of how people exist in space and in the world.
Yeah. I mentioned A Christmas Story because I think one of the funniest scenes in that is when Ralphie goes to visit Santa and he's, football, and then he's on the slide and he's like, I want the BB gun, and then Santa kicks his head and says, you'll shoot your eye out. But the way his face changes, just like it's just like that moment of realization where it's just like, oh no, everything's ruined. But Snow, you mentioned the scene in the park in Black Christmas, and I don't know why, but it just connected between those two scenes when I watched it last night.
That's funny.
Because when the dad thinks he's about to see his dead daughter, you see him approach, and he just kind of has that moment like, oh, thank God. And then he turns around.
But he's still looking at a dead kid.
Yeah, but he turns around, then the mom is there, and he cuts it right when he like goes to pat her on the shoulder. And it's just like, that cut to me is just like Ralphie being like, oh. It's just, I don't know how many people can do that just like flip of emotion and have it be convincing.
Yeah. Can I throw an aside? You can cut this out if you want.
I will.
But I saw that they just please do. I saw that they just made a sequel. They just made a Christmas Story movie where the same kid plays the kid as an adult, and I saw the poster, and he has two eyeballs, and I was like, they made this movie wrong. I'm not gonna watch it.
Oh my God, you're right.
There was already a sequel with Charles Grodin and Mary Steenburgen as the parents called A Summer Story, also called It Runs in the Family. I rented it from Blockbuster as a kid. I think Bob Clark also directed it. It's not bad from what I remember.
Okay.
On my list.
Yeah, it's like A Christmas Story, but in the summer. So there's all sorts of like summer antics. There's like fishing and stuff like that. Yeah.
Has anyone seen A Christmas Story? Christmas? I have not. Yeah, I figured if it was good at all, I would hear about it, and I've heard absolutely nothing. So it kind of confirms everything I thought it might be.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, how could it? How could it be anything?
Yeah. And fun fact, Jim, do you know Peter Billingsley is Ralphie? He is one of the head elves in Elf.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cute.
I like that. We should probably talk about Billy, though. Bob Clark, I saw an interview with him today where he said something that I thought was really interesting. He said his goal with Billy was to make a killer who is a subliminal character. And he ended that by saying, like, when you see Billy, like, all you get is a hand or an eyeball, and he is the camera. I mean, how do you all feel about that approach? Because it is pretty revolutionary how they shot Billy's scenes, and it's obviously, like, oh yeah, anyone can do that now, but Billy's pretty memorable.
He is, for a dude we never see, right? Yeah, we do see a hand a couple of times. We see a couple of eyeballs.
Yeah.
Are they always the same person's eyeballs, actor-wise? I genuinely don't know. Yeah. We hear 5 voices, you said, right? It's the bits we get of Billy are fragments, and I don't know that they're consistent, which is smart, right? He is trying to sort of remove the murderer from the movie.
Yeah.
It's so smart. And some of the things, with the 5 voices that are said are suggestive of possible backstories, but we have no idea whether he's mimicking, whether it's him. We don't even really know if his name is Billy.
Yeah.
Bob Clark refers to the character as Billy, which is the only reason that I'm comfortable. I in the movie, we don't know that we have no inclination that he's actually Billy, right? He says, what's the other name? Margot?
Are you there,
No.
Agnes? It's me, Billy.
Agnes.
Yeah.
Agnes.
Don't say what we did or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell them it's something, I don't know. But yeah, it allows you to be as terrified as you would be in that moment, because anyone listening to that phone call in real life would be going to their worst nightmare, and it allows the audience to do the same thing.
Right. I've never been pursued by a killer, but I don't imagine you're doing a police sketch of his face in your head. I imagine you're sort of getting sort of bits and pieces, and I don't know, his constant vocalizations are terrifying.
Yeah.
I think it's after he kills Mrs. Mack that we really sit with him rampaging through the attic. So scary.
Rocking the chair.
Oh, right. Because it's worth noting, right?
Rocking the chair.
We mostly hear him talking to them on the phone. Maybe that's not even true. We think about him as talking to them on the phone, but we hear him probably just as much.
We
just
also get
talking
him
to
babbling in
himself.
the attic a little bit.
Yeah, he just walks around and talks to himself all the time. He's just talking. He's like Popeye.
There's also very much the understanding that any time 2 characters are talking, he could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And obviously 06 really leans into that
Sure.
by having his eyeball visible in just about every fucking scene.
Yeah.
But in Bob Clark's, it's it's realistic that you could probably scroll through and see his shadow moving around in the backgrounds of shots. You feel like that could happen. It's almost like Ghost Watch in that respect. I wish I could have come up with a way to relate it to Saw, but I'll come up with some for 06.
And I do think I read that they had different people casting shadows at different times, just so there wasn't sort of a consistent body you could lock down on. That when you're seeing shadows being thrown, they'd grab someone and be like, "You're the shadow now."
Yeah, because they do a really, really good job of creating a scenario where the cops would have every reason to believe it's David.
Yes.
Not just because he's the disgruntled boyfriend
Peter,
of the character,
Peter?
but because he's around.
Peter.
Right?
Peter. Yes, yeah. Peter, he's always around, and he's always acting suspiciously.
Yeah,
when the
he's
cops
kind
are
of a
around,
maniac.
Yeah. He smashes his piano.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, that scene, right? Who's gonna pay for that? Come on,
Right? A grand piano. Many, many thousands of dollars, that piano.
Even back then, yeah.
I like that the movie has both kinds of movie cop and has a good, I think, pretty deft balance. We get that sort of Don Knotts goofball, and then we get John Saxon as the good cop who is not good enough a cop not to be fooled, not to not think that it's Peter.
Yeah.
That's how good Bob Clark is about setting up the red herrings.
And then you also have the one that just laughs at everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh yeah, the guy who's
Great
in the back,
background
being
Yeah.
Here,
He's
I'll
just,
do what I always do.
cracking up the whole
That's kind of
time.
Lynchian almost.
I was so stoked to see John Saxon. I don't know why. Someone explain to me, why do I love it when John Saxon pops up in things? Because I do. Every time I see him, I clap.
He's just so reliably
I think
good.
it's this and this and Nightmare on Elm Street. He's just he looks great as a movie cop.
He is a good movie cop.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, you guys ever see those pictures of him as a 70-year-old on the beach exercising with kettlebells? Just being a strong 70-year-old with no shirt. Worth looking up.
Noted. Anyway, I think we'll start to transition out of this one because there's still a lot to cover with the other two.
Wait, can I give you one more? This is just a small observation.
Yeah, I'll cut it out.
But there's, I did catch, I don't remember who it is now. I think in my brain it's Margot Kidder, but it could have been, honestly, anyone. It's probably Olivia Hussey is talking to someone on the phone, and we get on screen, her boyfriend says, "I love you," and she says, "I know," and I wrote, F off George Lucas. You think you made that joke up.
The same thing. All these things we take for granted.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks Han
They're
Solo
all
made
from
that
Black
lineup.
Christmas. Also, there's a painted hockey mask. Do people paint their hockey masks? There's a guy with a painted
Oh my
hockey
god! Can
mask.
you imagine getting hit in the head
So
with a
good.
puck wearing one of those old hockey masks? Good Lord.
Brutal.
Also, that crazy sweater Olivia Hussey's wearing
With the
that hand
hands?
patterns.
I love it. I
Someone
want
was
that
wearing that at
sweater.
the screening the other day, and I was like, I know that from somewhere. What the fuck is that?
It looks like something Noel Fielding would wear.
So I have a question on Mrs. Mack, because she is probably my favorite part of this movie. But when Billy, I think, is in her room, it's like the last phone call, they have just like a record sitting there that's like the Mac, what is it? The something sisters, because her full name, it's like Mac and something, I think, because the dad.
Yeah, I think that's her when she's a teenager.
That's
right?
what I was thinking, but I've never put
that
so. Together before. McHenry, I think, maybe. But yeah, because like the dad says her full last name, and then the record's there.
Oh, and it's like, the same as her. Oh,
yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
They make some joke about her being like the vaudeville queen of like 1937 or something. I don't know. Maybe that is actually a reference to a showbiz career.
I think it must be.
The hiding the bottle in the toilet tank. I understand it's just water. You know, I know how toilets work, but
not gross. Not gross.
Put it in a bag.
It's not gross, Bennett. It's fine. It's not gross.
I'm with Bennett. I want it in a bag.
Also, I think if you polled alcoholics, a pretty normal place to hide alcohol.
I'm sure.
Wait, I have one more. Sorry, I have a bunch of notes that I'm trying to slam through before we move on. This one comes back. The cat's name is Claude. How do you think that's spelled?
Claud, but I think
Claud.
Are
you think it's UDE or do you think it's WED?
I would imagine it's a U.
Like Claude.
Yeah.
Like
is it here's my question. Is that a funny joke or was I reading it wrong?
I like that. I think you read it wrong. But it's probably just like a pun that 99% of people never catch.
Yeah. Like Santa Claus.
Yeah, exactly. Like Santa Claus. And the last thing that I think we just need to note before we move on is that this movie is for a horror movie and for a 1974 movie, remarkably progressive, right? Yes. Horror is like traditionally very conservative. Even now, it's like very much about like these people did sex and so they have to die, right? And this movie is like sexually cool, kind of with whatever. Olivia Hussey's whole story is that she is going to have an abortion regardless of what her boyfriend thinks. And it's like... And the movie is on her side with that, right? There's sort of a whole runner where the police are like, "You girls are fine. You're not going missing," right? There's a lot in it that is for a movie of its era and genre remarkably progressive, which I think it's probably well documented in essays. I don't read, so I don't know, but it is, I think, just worth touching on before we move on to the other movies.
Definitely. And we will talk about this more with the 2019 remake, because that is one thing the director talked about. Yeah, no, that's like why she wanted to
I'm surprised
that
that's part of the 2019 movie.
Is this a stretch, or are you doing a bit right now, Jim?
No, I didn't pick up on that at all in the 2019 movie.
That's why I mentioned it's important to know like when this movie was created, because it is like, God, they're doing all of this like then? Huh.
Right. Yeah, you still see movies that come out now that are, surely some are intentionally less progressive, but you see some that I think are unintentionally just being horror movies and still being significantly less progressive than this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's in keeping too with a movie that kind of like shows and doesn't tell and like trusts its audience to like connect a lot of the dots, that like when what's her name? Jess, Olivia Hussey's character is confronting Peter or sort of like, you know, just telling him what's up. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to leave the conservatory and we're going to get married." And she says something like, "You know, do you remember when we first met and you told me all about your dreams of being a concert pianist, and I told you all about my dreams? I still have those dreams."
Yeah.
She doesn't have some monologue where she like outlines the dreams and is like, you know, and you get to be a concert pianist, but I, you know, it's just Bob Clark trusts his audience to like take it as a given that we're like on Jess's side, and that like these unspoken dreams mean just as much as, if not more, than like, you know, Peter obsessing over his piano recital.
And to me, that makes it more progressive. Exactly. Like it makes it feel that much more empowering, that it's like, so she doesn't have to defend her case. It doesn't even become a part of the murder story at all, really. I mean, other than that, we have our suspicion, or the police have their suspicions about Peter, but
it's not like I feel like this is a weird thing to be taking a swing at, but it's not like if you ever watch like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, right? Where they're like, we're going to go to immense lengths to make sure that the only reason you might not like Sidney Poitier's character is that he's black, right? He's like the most generous, the smartest human being. He has the best job.
Super Sidney.
Right?
And they haven't even had sex yet.
Bob Clark's not going to do that. He's like, she's a person, And that's good enough, right? Like we do learn more about Peter's dreams, and he's awesome at playing the piano. We see him play the piano for kind of a long time, and it's like the kind of like weirdo modernist stuff that I think is great, and he does a good job. And then so we're like, oh, he has dreams and they're great, and he can achieve them or whatever. And she's just like, I have dreams, and we accept that because she's a human being, right? That is pretty progressive for dealing with a woman in a movie, sadly.
Yeah.
Well, even her conversation with Phil too, when she like talks about it, they don't have like they don't have a huge teary like we're here for each other sort of moment. They have like a kind of like a moment of like understanding and like solidarity that feels remarkable, given that this movie came out the year or maybe a year after. I think the year Roe versus Wade was passed in like the U.S. Obviously, this is set in Canada, in Montreal. Although I don't know, that might like complicate things more, given I figure it's a little more Catholic. But also that it came out 6 years after Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Yeah, like Stanley Kramer is making movies at the same time that this movie comes out.
Yes.
And if Stanley Kramer had written Black Christmas, you better believe it ends with Jess giving a monologue defending her abortion before she goes to sleep.
Oh, for sure.
Gets killed by Billy.
Yeah.
Right? Like.
I was going to have one final point about Billy, but I think we'll lead into the second movie with this because Billy is treated entirely differently from the first one to the second one.
I'll tell you what, in the first movie, here's my one problem with the first movie. He's not yellow enough.
Yeah, I know. Could have used a little more jaundice. But I think the thing that always gets me about Black Christmas is how it just leaves everything hanging, and how it's like when she finally seems like, okay, she's safe, like everyone's here, they're surrounding her in the bed, she killed the killer. But then it's like, oh no, the dad fainted and we have to take him to the hospital. Okay. And then she's just alone in the house. And then it just starts that brilliant zoom out. And it's like, oh, there's still a dead body in the attic, and oh god,
and
the
a murdery
ringing.
guy. Yeah.
Oh, it is just, I don't know of a better horror ending than that, because it's just like when all the girls come back, like it's not done,
right?
And that to me is just having no definition on the killer. Like we never see his face, and like he's just still there. They think all these girls are still missing.
Not even just no definition on the killer, like they don't even know who's dead at the end of the movie. They don't know if that girl's dead or not. Like that's like such an unfinished ending in such a powerful way.
Yeah, and I just remember watching this with friends, and when the phone rings so quietly, my friend just went, no, no. Because it's not just like zoom in on the phone like it's ringing. Right. It's just like, oh no, it's going.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Yeah, we will talk, I think, by talking about the two later versions, I think we're going to cover more of the original, so
sure.
This seems like a good place to me to cut it for now. Does anyone have any final thoughts they want to toss out before we take a little break?
Oh, I love that bit where the like neighborhood watch comes over, those two hosers who are like talking about like looking for the killer.
Okay, well we'll keep you safe, all right?
Great moment of them laughing at him. Yeah, we'll keep you safe, all right. Some great Canadian content in this film for sure.
No, and I was thinking
they're
about
like, we invite you in, and they're like, oh. Sorry, you guys.
Oh no, that's okay. I was thinking about that when you were saying earlier, Jim, about how everyone's like so like warm and cozy except for the killer. Like they all have genuine feelings, even though they're real people. And I felt like that extended to the community that he depicts, and this environment that he depicts, where they're all like real people looking out for each other.
Mm-hmm. Even the dumb
every
dirtbag
character
cop.
interaction is so good. Yeah.
He's an idiot.
His, like,
he doesn't not love them. He's just an idiot.
Yeah.
And also with the search party, like when they close the door and she's like, every window and door in this house is unlocked. It's like so many movies have done that. Yeah, they're just kind of like, oh, we should probably fix this. But like so many movies do that now, and it's like, but the killer's behind the curtain.
Right.
It doesn't do that. It just lets it
it's
happen.
true. They could like then be closing a window and he like jumps out from behind something or something. But no, he's just hanging out in the attic.
It's like, he's already got two of your friends upstairs.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing. This movie does like a cliche better than the movies that would follow too, because like obviously like every horror movie, it's a cliche to be like, oh, why the fuck is she running upstairs when like she knows the killer's there? Like, but here it is like she knows the killer's up there. She knows she can get out, and she runs upstairs to potentially save like Barb and Phyllis.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, it's a great version of what would become a stock scene, what would become like a famous like cinema sins sort of a scene.
Yeah.
But it's also in this movie, it doesn't ever. I don't know if I wholeheartedly believe this, but I think to the characters, it feels like there is a guy who's doing murders, right? Whereas in a lot of horror movies, there is like an unstoppable force. And to some degree, Billy does play that role, right? He is unstopped and he is an unseen force. But it feels like to them, there's like a guy who's killing people. And when it's like, oh, there's a guy who's killing people in my attic, I don't know about you guys, part of me is like, yeah, I could fight a guy who's killing people. That's just a guy, you know?
I'd probably run, but yeah, and like just also with the cop, like if you screw this up and then he just immediately like, he's in the house, run,
Yeah.
Jess, and then she drops
he's
the
such
phone.
an idiot.
It's just like, run. Oh, so good.
Oh, and yeah, sorry, one more thing. It's such a cliche to be tracking the call, and it's such a boring scene in movies today because it's just a guy sitting at a computer.
Yeah.
But when it's a guy running through a fucking warehouse, running through like the ending of
You have to find the
Raiders of
switcher.
Lost Ark through the switchboards and stuff to see a light going off, like that's
Yeah.
Yeah, that's much nicer.
Yeah.
great.
I love
The
that.
greatest film ever made, Black Christmas, 1974. I'm calling it right now.
Did any of you recognize the phone tracker from Christmas Story?
Oh, no. Who is he in Christmas Story?
He's the Christmas tree salesman.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That is the equivalent role.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a great little Bob Clark touch.
I love that.
So I think that wraps up Bob Clark's Black Christmas for right now. But come back tomorrow because we're going to have another episode looking at the 2006 Black Christmas, which we'll get into it. It's a sequel. And then the 2019 remake. These are so different from the first one. I'm really excited to talk about these two. Thank you for listening. We have a little mini creepy Christmas horror series going right now on Split Tooth, so check out what we've got going there. And we'll be back shortly. Thank you for listening.